I told him that I'm willing to approach any problem and document any problem. Like if the people who work at the facility don't like the coffee, and I hear that from everybody, I'll make sure that I write that down and let you know. But you know, the problems that we identified weren't typical software problems, right? We weren't just looking for, all right, well, what are your digital problems? We were looking for holistically, what are the problems that all of your employees are encountering? What are the friction points, and what would make everybody's jobs easier?
Welcome to the Forward Slash, where we lean into the future of IT. I'm Aaron Chesney with my beautiful co-host, James Carmen. James, who do we have in the hot seat today?
I love that word, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
It's radio. They don't know I'm lying.
Yeah, that's true. Today we have Ryan Wilson with us to talk a little bit about the world of product. Ryan, introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. Hey, well, my name is Ryan Wilson. I'm the product practice lead at Callibrity. I've been working in the field of product for almost 25 years at this point. I've got a degree in human-computer interaction.
That's excellent. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, when you say product, and we talk about product, we kind of throw that word around, and I know it might mean different things to different people. Maybe talk a little bit about, like, what do we even mean when we're talking about product?
Sure. Well, I kind of gravitate towards Donald Norman's definition of product. So Donald Norman is considered the godfather of user experience, and back in the 1990s, he was working for Apple's product department and thinking about what the best way to create products that will resonate for people. And what that meant was the holistic output. It wasn't just this, once you get the computer and turn it on, how does interacting with that make you feel? It was, what does the packaging look like coming from the factory? How is that product displayed in a store? Does it look daunting? Is the packaging created in such a way that you're able to carry it out of the store easily and get it into your back seat without too much trouble? How is the box designed once you open it up and think about how to take things out and get everything set up? And then ultimately how it looks sitting on your desk, but also, how do you interact with it? How does it work when you turn it on?
I know a lot of people talk about, like, when the difference between, like, a product-based business and kind of, our business being a services-based business. For products, you consume them, whereas for a service, you experience it. But what you're talking about sounds a lot like an experience, right? That you're thinking more about an experience even in the product world. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to me, good products mean something that has been well thought through for both what the stakeholder wants the product to be, but also for the audience who's going to adopt it. And so, to get to that level, you really have to start at the beginning, start at product discovery, and start thinking about what is the solution. Well, actually, even further back than that, what is the problem we're going to solve here? Who's the audience that this problem is going to solve it for? Let's talk to them immediately and find out if their problem aligns with what the stakeholder thinks is the problem. And then get alignment from the stakeholder on, this is the thing we think we need to solve, and here's our potential solutions to a 20,000 foot level before we move into a product definition phase.
Is the answer ever the solution is to not provide a solution?
Often the solution is, sometimes you don't need a solution. If you meet with the intended audience and they don't have any friction points or frustrations, and the product that your stakeholder wants you to build doesn't do anything for your audience, and you've proven that audience is the correct audience and not an edge case or a secondary audience, and there is an audience that the problem solves for, then recommending not to build is just as equally as important.
I had a professor in one of my classes once say that you don't want to be a solution looking for a problem. Always make sure that you have a problem that you're providing a solution for.
That's well
think
said.
that kind of resonates with that.
Yeah.
How does one, or maybe it's not a general thing necessarily, but how did you get into, like, how did you get to decide, hey, I want to do this for a living? How did Ryan Wilson arrive at that? This is what I want to do when I grow up.
Man, that's a great question. I stumbled through what I want to do when I grow up for so long. I figured, by the time I got to college or before college, I would know what that was. Um, Early on, it was I wanted to be an architect during the day and a stand-up comedian in the evenings. But I learned that my stand-up routine isn't so great early on. But the thing that got me was, so when I was an undergrad, websites were becoming, like, well designed, well thought out websites were becoming more of a thing. And to date myself, this is the time of the Internet Explorer Netscape battles. Who was going to provide better internet display? I was trying to make my own major because I gelled with what marketing was, but I gelled with what visual communication was. And so I went and I pitched, I'm going to create my own major. This is what I'm going to do. And these are the courses I'll take for it. And the person was like, no, have you heard of the School of Visual Communication? And I said, no. And so I went and talked to them, and they had a website design and animation design program that was called Interactive Multimedia. And again, dating myself, we were focused on creating interactive CD-ROMs. And so that was a big focus, and creating things in Director and writing in a coding language called Lingo. And that just made, like, entering that program, I was excited about every project that I did in every single one of the classes. I've always been a problem solver. And so that allowed me to approach these new problems that I've never had before and go about solving them in ways that were still, at the time, pretty new. I went into a career of creating e-learning modules for the medical community, for the legal community, for e-commerce training. I did a coffee training module for baristas for the Franke Sinfonia in the early 2000s. But that's generally why I think I like product consulting, is that every problem is new. And so, again, getting back into the whole idea of product discovery, I love going in and hearing what the problems are that the stakeholders are having and what their audience is having, and diving into that and understanding it as quickly and as thoroughly as I can, and then coming up with different solutions on how we might solve the problems that they're having.
And for the younger audience, I just want to say a CD is this little plastic disc that you would put into a slot and it would hold information. So you may not have seen one in your lifetime, but that's what they are. Uh,
You could have
so
used, it's like a DVD, but I don't think nowadays nobody knows
it's
what
kind
those
of the
are
same
anymore either.
thing, right? It's like in a DVD is another plastic disc that they put movies on or software sometimes. So Ryan, is there a product out there where you've taken a look at it and like said, I really like what they did with this. They really put some thought into what they were putting out there.
Let me start by saying this. I am a picky consumer. Based on what I do, I have high standards for everything that I buy, or everything that I use. Um, so, I don't know if I have a perfect product that I've ever used, but I think most recently, a good comparison is the new Xbox Series X or whatever it is, and the PlayStation 5. I have both of them for specific games for each of the platforms. And I love the PlayStation 5 because it's clear that they've thought out everything about it. Not just the digital interface, but the machine itself, where it sits, how it brings in the air so that you're not sucking in as much dust in comparison to how I think the Xbox is laid out. But down to the controller, like, they've thought out how the controller works and how when you press the buttons, it has a softer feel and a softer sound So I'm moving the sticks around and there's not a bunch of clicking, as opposed to when I was playing Starfield last fall on my Xbox, and my wife's asleep in bed beside me, and I'm going clack 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 with the Xbox controller because they just took the older controller and put it in a new plastic housing, but didn't think about how to buffer the sound or how even if that is that a good experience for somebody is the way that these buttons feel and the noises it makes, or
Yeah,
did they just ship it because it was cheap, which I
and
think
some
is probably.
gamers love that hard, tacky click, 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 which I'm like, well, not if you're streaming, because then it comes through your mic and all you hear is tick, 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 and it's like annoying.
I mean,
Developers are
and
like
that's
that too, right? With their keyboards, with the clickety
Yeah,
clickety keyboards. I don't
like
like. Yeah, I
but I
like
I
mean
that.
don't want to
that
hear
that
that.
ties back into product, right? It's there's all this subjective things that you need to think of, and so again, that goes back to part of that problem or product discovery. It's not my opinion. It's never my opinion. It's my. I think of myself kind of like a private detective. I come in, I try to get all the facts, I paste them up on a wall, and I bring red string between everything. But I need to know what their audience wants, because if the audience wants a clacky remote, a clacky controller, then that's probably what we're going to ship, because at least holistically or a majority of their audience wants that. Then that satisfies a need for what they have. If there's no preference, then we could recommend going with something a little bit softer. And again, I'm talking about physical products, which the the discovery for physical products and the discovery for digital products are fairly similar.
Yeah,
It's
I've
funny.
even used some applications where they've added in like clickety clack sounds for when you're typing, so that it sounds like you're typing on it. Now it was a typing tutor, which made sense, but you could hear your rhythm, and actually as you were doing it, it was like I kind of see why they did that. It kind of helps you feel your pace and notice that you're getting faster as you're learning. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool little aspect of that.
And
Uh,
if that wasn't a forethought, that probably came out of usability testing, where the feedback they were getting from the people who were doing the tests is like, yeah, I'm trying to type, but I can't hear where I'm at. So, if I had a metronome style feel, then maybe I'd have something to pace myself against.
yeah, I think that application probably predated usability testing. I ran
Funny
it on
story,
Windows 95.
probably not. They've been doing ergonomics and human factors since the 50s, if not earlier. So the field of what is now referred to as UX, user experience, has been named so many different things over the course of about 100 years.
I would imagine. I mean, product's not my world. I'm traditionally a software engineer, so it's a little different background. But like, I would imagine there are times where like you're talking about here, Aaron. Maybe just using two different products, the clickety clackety, they don't pick up on that's why they like it better. Like they can't articulate why one is better than the other. Do they teach you special techniques like in the product world? Are there do they teach you how to figure out like and dig into that and really get that out of the user and understand like things they can't articulate on their own to help them articulate what they like about a product?
Yes and no. What I found works the best in both. So it's not just usability testing. It's interviews, it's observations, is sitting with the user and letting them talk and hearing what they have to say. And the more silent you can be, the more you're going to draw out of them. Nobody really likes an uncomfortable silence. And so if you ask a question and they answer it short, you can do a 6 to 10 count, and usually they'll start to backfill other things that they're finding a problem with. And I've actually, much like podcasting, you start off with questions where you're going to get an easy answer and you're going to get them comfortable with giving you feedback. And so by the time you get to your actual questions, which you want to keep them short to like maybe 10, 12 questions at most. But by the time you get to question 4, they're on a roll and they feel comfortable giving you any sort of feedback. If it's back to the key analogy, that's where they might say, well, when I press on this key, I really want to feel it click and I want to hear that click. And that way I know that whatever process is running.
On the usability side, I've also seen in some of the usability tests that I was able to participate in is that sometimes when you don't say anything and you're watching their screen, you can see where they're lost. Like if you ask them to do a simple thing, it's like, where would you go to save a file? And you can watch their mouse kind of float around the screen and not see them finding a solution. Is like, oh, well, if they don't know where to go to save it, maybe there's something that we need to change in our interface so that it's a little bit more apparent so that they're not lost in that
Yeah.
kind of view.
And you also need to consider how many tests are you performing and is this an edge case? I ran a series of tests, it's, wow, been more than a decade ago, where you capture time on task typically. So like the time that they start the task to the time that they complete it. And up until I think I tested with 8 different people. And so the first 7 people, the time on task for this was, somewhere between 30 and 45 seconds. Reasonable with the new interface. And again, stepping back real quick, I like to test every usability test with a new user, someone who hasn't seen the system before, because we want to test usability, not memorability. But in this case, my 7th user, and I remember it so clearly, it was the end of the day, like 4:30, and I was like, yeah, all the other tests, all of the tasks had taken like 10 minutes to complete. And we're in task number 3, and we've been testing now for 25 minutes. And he's stuck on this one task. And as a tester, one of the key things to being a good usability tester is to sit there and have a good poker face and be quiet and just watch and remind them, we're testing the interface, we're testing the product, we're not testing you. So feel free to make mistakes, but we don't answer questions, right? Like we're not there to help them, guide them along, because that's not testing. And I've noticed in a lot of like younger product people, that's a hard thing to teach, is because you want everybody to succeed. You want them to do good. And so this guy was on time on task was like 45 minutes. He wanted to get it right. And I was like, you can end the task at any time. We can move on. No, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. And so like, it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock. My wife's expecting me home like 45 minutes earlier for dinner. And I'm waiting for this guy to finish task number 5 so we can go on to task number 6. And yeah. So backing up to comment on what you were saying, you have to be wary of edge cases because there are people who just aren't going to get it. So if you're seeing a majority of people making that save error, then maybe placement is unclear, or maybe your audience is a younger audience and doesn't know what a floppy disk looks like, which is a traditional modern save icon.
Well, most of them call it the save icon. They don't realize it's a floppy disk. I've actually said, "Oh, that's the save button." I'm like, "No, it's a floppy disk." They're like, "What's a floppy disk?" So yeah, it's one of those gap things where they've seen it in applications. They know it's what they hit to save, but they don't know the origin of it. So like for those of us that have been around and know what the technology is, it's oh, okay, yeah, it's like a save to disk thing where they just know it from using older applications that, oh, that's the save button.
Yeah, and once something becomes learned behavior, you know, I would question: do they need to know what the origin is? Like, if that's what they associate with, this is what this thing is there a need to change it?
Kind of like a red octagon, right? Everybody kind of knows, oh, that probably means stop.
You talked about the world of product a lot so far, and but I think when you're working for a company that that's your day job every day in and out day in and day out is building this product and living and breathing in that world is one thing. But as a consultant, I would guess it's a little bit of a different approach, or there are unique challenges in the consulting side of being a product consultant. Can you talk a little bit about what does that look like?
In my experience in consulting, I've worked for large corporations, like enterprise level companies. I've also worked at corporations doing product. And I've noticed that there's a big difference between the two worlds, whereas an enterprise level company is likely to have a very structured, agile type company or type product group where you have your POs and your PMs, and there's a very defined curriculum for who has what role and what requirements or what duties those people do. In consulting, I found, and numerous clients I'm sure would agree, is the faster you can move to the best results. And what I found is you have to be a little bit more lean than having all of those multiple roles, whereas those just become hats that one or two people will wear in the discovery and definition process. And so, I think that I can do a very good product discovery given 6 weeks time and a technical consultant to either work alongside me or consult with, so that as I'm identifying these problems, somebody's asking the right questions from a technology point of view, but also that what we're conceiving should be the solution. And again, talking in discovery here, so we're like 20,000 foot top down view, but we want to make sure that what we're recommending can be built, because that's the worst thing to happen, right? Is that, and I've seen this at larger places where uh, everybody's siloed, and the product design team sits over here, and they're just tasked with, hey, make this thing, and they make it, but who knows if it's actually going to be able to be built, or it doesn't utilize any of the existing companies' components or structure or anything like that. And so I was talking about product discovery. So in working in that product discovery, you want to get to the 20,000 foot view of what the requirements are. What is this thing? What's the general shape of this? And what are all the things that we need to consider? What are all the requirements we need to consider within that to be able to have it built? And then moving forward into your definition phase with a high enough level of confidence that that's the right thing to do. And I've already talked about meeting with users with interviews and observations, and doing usability testing. And that's how you get to that first level, like high level view of what the product should be. And then when you go into the definition phase, you're really digging down into each one of those requirements to create actionable issues, tickets, epics, so that you can shape up, size up. And Aaron, I know we were talking about scope earlier today, so that you can really scope out what this thing is, the size of it, what needs to be built, what are the features that are going to be included, what are the stretch goals for this, and then be able to do an accurate development estimate and get alignment with the stakeholder on this is what we're going to build. And hopefully, in that agreement, you're avoiding scope creep so that you can just be focused on building what is, and I know this is a visual medium, but I'm making air quotes, but what is the right program or right product at the time.
What have you seen happen when those things don't fall into place as planned? Like maybe they haven't done a good round of discovery or don't have their requirements fully defined before they hit the ground running, or they're working towards an imaginary date that they've put a line in the sand on.
Or they brought you in because they don't need you to do discovery because they've already done discovery, so they already know what needs to be built. I've been on all of those examples of projects before, and the same thing always happens. You get a couple weeks in, and you make recommendations on what might be, the right thing from your perspective as you're starting to really understand this, or to modify things that are already in action, and you get pushback because, well, no, the plan is already this, and we have to hit this deadline. It's like, but we want to build the right thing, because if you build the wrong thing, then you're going to spend a whole bunch of money fixing it later to have it be the right thing. And so the best thing to do is really do that discovery and definition up front, which is going to save you so much time during development and even afterwards when the right product was created. But I've going back to your question, I've been on one of the projects I'm thinking of specifically is there were too many stakeholders. I think we had about 10 stakeholders who only met every 2 weeks to review the product and all had different ideas and opinions on what the thing should be. And so every 2 weeks, the scope shifted completely, and we couldn't get, like I was saying, hey, can we get just one stakeholder who's in charge, who can meet with those stakeholders and then come to the demo meetings and just be one voice so that we can guarantee that we're going to hit a timeline and guarantee that this is what the scope is going to be, this is what our push is going to be for the next X number of weeks, rather than trying to pivot every 2 weeks because we're never going to get anything done. Yeah.
And speaking of deadlines, I love deadlines in the whooshing sound that they make as they fly by. So it's
I mean, if you can accurately scope a product or a feature or whatever, hitting those deadlines should be realistic. I mean, if you go through discovery and definition and everybody agrees on what that MVP is, and it has these 4 features, and that doesn't shift, realistically, your deadline should be easy to achieve.
right. And when those things don't fall into place, something has to give. If you've got somebody that's hardlining a date and a given scope, generally your quality or your experience is just going to decline to the point where it's not going to be a successful product.
Yeah. But it's always good, and going back to the private detective analogy, I find myself in all of the engagements that I'm on asking why. Why? Like I sound like a 3-year-old. But why? Why is that deadline necessary? Like why is it that date? Okay, well, what happens if we don't miss it? Okay, well then if nothing really major happens, can we push that back by 2 weeks, which will guarantee us X, Y, and Z?
One of the directors that I worked with used to say, try and ask 5 whys. And anytime that somebody asks you to do something, and it was a good way of drilling down to get to the meat of what they're really asking for,
Mm-hmm.
and why they need it. It was great for discovery, because sometimes you couldn't even get down to 5 whys. By the third one, they've either talked themselves out of needing it, or they've gotten so succinct about why they need that it was like, okay, yeah, I could see that, and you didn't have to ask any more questions.
Yeah, as long as you have stakeholders who are willing to have those conversations. I've also been on projects where it's been, and as a consultant, it's always the stakeholder who's having you on the project. You're there to help them, and so you can make a recommendation of saying, "Hey, I've heard what the audience is saying. I've heard what the stakeholders are saying, and I think we should be building X, not Y." And they need to make that decision, and their decision can be, well, no, we brought you on to build Y, we're building Y. And so then you pack up all of your information around why you should have been building X, document that so that if anybody afterwards has to go back and build X, you've got all this information for that, and then you get on board with building Y, because that's what the stakeholder wants. I've also been on projects where asking why more than once was too much. You're
Yeah.
just no. I just have you here to do these things. Just do the things. I'm telling you what to do. That's why I'm paying you to do these.
The other thing I've run into sometimes is the issue with tradition. Well, we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
What are your recommendations for getting over that hurdle of tradition?
I think it goes back to the five whys that you were talking about a second ago. I worked with a guy a couple years back who he called it the Hardy Boys method. So it was really the six whys: the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And again, going back into that, we're private detectives. It fit really well. And so I found that asking those questions really helps to identify, well, why have you done it all that way all the time? Or why has that been the way that you've always done it? And is that working? And showing, interviews and observations or usability testing, showing to them that that isn't working or that the value lies somewhere else, then really can help to change opinions. Not all the time, but especially if you have quantitative metrics, not just qualitative metrics. But you can say, "Hey, look, we did a time on task for what you want to build versus a time on task for what we think is the right solution. And look, you can save X number of seconds over across everybody at your company in one day. The productivity is going to increase tenfold."
When you look back on your career, do you have a favorite product or endeavor that you were part of that you're the most proud of, or you don't have to like name names or anything if you just want to talk about the gist of what the product was about.
Sure. The perfect project has is always kind of a white whale. You're always chasing that perfect one. And up until recently, I would have said this project that I did almost 10 years ago now would have been my favorite project that I'd ever worked on, where the stakeholder came and said, "Hey, I have this idea. I don't know how to get it to market. It's all in your hands. Go." Um, that, given the fact that they came in and gave the credibility and trust to myself and my team to take their idea and still work alongside of them, but run with it and get it to market, uh, and we're open to a lot of our ideas in building that. That always put them at the top of what my favorite project ever that I worked on was. But up recently, um, Callibrity had a client that was very much the same type of client where they're like, "Hey, we brought you on because we know we have problems, and we're going to give you 6 weeks to come in and meet with everybody and identify what those problems are, and we want you to tell us how we might solve those problems." And so we did a very short run. I would have preferred to have a couple more weeks on that project, but we identified 11 problems across their facility, three of which we recommend building digital solutions for. And here in about a week, we're kicking off the second phase of that, where we're going into definition to flesh out what those three digital products will be and give them estimates to build. One of the builds has already been greenlit and funded.
Did you
So
ask him the question, what would you say you do here?
I told them that I'm willing to approach any problem and document any problem. Like if the people who work at the facility don't like the coffee, and I hear that from everybody, I'll make sure that I write that down and let you know. But you know the problems that we identified, it was myself and a technical consultant from Callibrity. The problems that we identified weren't typical software problems, right? We weren't just looking for, all right, well, what are your digital problems? We were looking for holistically, what are the problems that all of your employees are encountering? What are the friction points and what would make everybody's jobs easier? And one of the big solutions was you need a centralized wiki for all of your processes because over the 20 employees that they have in the facility, somebody keeps all of their information in written notebooks. Other people had SharePoint stuff, which the company had stopped using years ago, but they still pointed to the SharePoint files, and they're stored in both PowerPoint and PDF. And so, copying those or sharing those, duplicating those into new formats is harder for them. Um, I forget, there were like three other. Oh, there's binders, printed binders on how to do this research, and the facility. One of the requirements for this facility is a need for speed to be able to do these processes quickly. And so to be able to do those processes quickly and to make it uniform for everybody who works there to be able to find that information, you really need just a central hub where all of that information is, and really just a search bar. So you can say, here's my problem, type, type, type. And to be able to find that information quickly so you can solve your problem and go about, continuing what you would be doing at the facility.
Yeah, it's interesting that it just seems like as you talk about what you're doing with product and when it comes to consulting, I mean consulting is really just a fight against the XY problem in general, like forever with consultants. They need to solve X, but they decide, okay, if we can just do Y, that should solve it, and they come and ask us, how do we do Y? Well, tell me how to do Y. So that we come in and we think the answer is to help them figure out how to do Y, but if we take a step back, we really need to solve for X. Like that's the problem we really need to solve. And if we focus on that, Y is not even a valid solution for X. So let's forget about that, right? So I think it's interesting that if we can, from a consulting standpoint, if you can get to that, that problem early and go on the path, divert the project down the path of X instead of taking that detour down the path of Y that's going to lead to nowhere, you can lead to better outcomes. So I like that aspect. You didn't phrase it in that way, but that's just kind of how in my mind that's how I framed it to myself so I could understand it.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. And often, you know, in consulting, by the time you meet with a client, they've already done their own problem solving. Then they might think they need, I forget which one you used, X or Y. They might think that Y is what they need because they've been having meetings for the last 6 months in order to meet with consultants to pitch that solution. And so it's really that private detective work, going in there and really finding out what the real problem is.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten burned by the XY thing, and it's when you're really busy, it can happen, right? So that in my experience, what's happened to me in the past. I mean, Aaron, you've probably been around for some of these when we worked together in our former career. Somebody will come to me and say, "How do I do Y?" And I say, "Oh, well, you just do this, this, and this." And they go off and do what I help them with, and they go and try to solve the problem. Well, it blows up, and the answer, they say, "Well, why on earth did you do this way?" Well, James told me how to do this. Well, hold on a second. I didn't know you were trying to solve this other problem over here. So that's the thing that we run into, and it happens on a larger scale with consulting companies. Is that's just a small scale thing, but that's the kind of thing we're talking about. Is avoiding that. Oh, Callibrity told us to do, write a mobile app and that'll solve all our problems. Well, that's not what we said. You told us you wanted a mobile app, so we built a mobile app for you. But if we can get upstream from that and make the decision, well, you don't really need a mobile app. You really need a Alexa action or something like that, right? That would be better for the people that are using your product.
I've actually done that to myself before in a development process where I was like, oh, I need to solve this problem with this. And then I get, down the road with it and go, nope, scrap it, restart. I was totally going down the wrong path. I didn't ask myself the question of what it is I really needed, and didn't solve my own problem correctly. So yeah, it does make a difference. Matter of fact, I did this just in the last couple months.
Well, one of the examples I've seen in this XY problem, world is, someone comes to you and says, "Well, how do I get the last three characters of a file name?" Oh, well, you just do, substring last three, whatever string manipulation function you use to get the last three characters. All right, there's my answer. Well, if you dug deeper into it, what they're really looking for is what is the file extension. But not all file extensions are three characters. So you just told them how to get three characters. You didn't tell them how to get the file extension. But it's that sort of thing, right? If you dig deeper, there's an underlying issue that you're actually trying to solve, and just three characters isn't going to do it. You need to look for the dot, right? the last dot.
Which goes back to what I was originally saying, how every project, every product needs a discovery phase. And in that discovery phase, we hope to unearth what the root cause is or what the root problem is for what our clients are asking for in order to provide them with the right solution.
Yeah, and it can be difficult because I know people they take offense to, when they come to you and say, well, I need to know, how do I get the last three characters of a string? And you say, well, hold on a second, back up a second, tell me what you're trying to accomplish. What's the outcome you're looking at? Forget about that. I just need those three characters off the end of the string. Just tell me how to do that. Tell me how to do that. How do you artfully kind of walk them backwards and help them get to the point where they understand, okay, I got to back up a little bit and really take a look at the underlying outcome I'm looking to achieve. How do you do that? What's the magic sauce there?
I think that the way that we all would probably solve that would be similar and be like, oh, I hear how frustrated you are. I hear how quickly you need this answer. So here's a quick solution that I'm giving you. In the example of working with clients and doing product discovery and definition, it's that proof. So you're creating documentation around, here's the problems that we heard. We interviewed 11 people who work at this company, and here's all of the problems generalized, kind of in a thought cloud of what we're hearing. And the big clusters are around this and this and this. And so therefore, I think we need to dig in here a little bit further, and being able to articulate that and show documentation and qualitative and quantitative metrics around that, and saying, 7 of 11 people said that you need to have a better source of information for the facility. It's an easier sell. And also, I assign severity ratings to each one of the problems that I end up finding in these discovery phases. You can read people's body language and their feedback in these interviews and observations. And so if you're hearing a lot of people who say, this is a problem, but you're also feeling that they're frustrated, or maybe they're even voicing how frustrated they are, then that increases your severity level. Also, if it's a breaking problem. So if you are talking about a digital issue, or even down to a physical issue, the coffee machine's broken, or we're frequently out of filters. Maybe that's a problem that you need to solve, but that's a higher severity rating, because it's going to quickly decrease. By solving that problem, it's going to quickly decrease that employee's pain point and allow them to do better work.
All right. So, Aaron, sorry, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to say that, I actually started drinking black coffee because of that kind of a situation where our our coffee situation was degrading, where I used to drink coffee with cream and sugar. Well, we were working a lot of hours and I really needed coffee and we ran out of creamer. So I just went to black with sugar. Then we ran out of sugar. I'm like, well, I just gonna drink it black and have worked through that, and now I always drink my coffee black, and it's just kind of one of those things where it's like I don't need this problem solved right now. What I really need is caffeine. So I'll solve it by just drinking it black.
Are you ready for the lightning round? I think we're ready as well. I'll ask the first question. My colleague will ask the second question, and so on and so forth. And we'll do until we're tired of you answering the questions. That's how it works. All right. Question number 1: invisibility or super strength?
Flight.
Okay. I will accept that answer as well.
Super Mario or Zelda?
Zelda.
Do you snore?
Only when I drink too much.
What's the capital of New York?
New York
No,
City.
Albany.
Are reindeer real creatures?
Yes.
Paper or plastic?
Paper.
Have you ever slapped someone in the face?
Yes.
What's your favorite? carnival food.
Steak on a stick.
How many redheads are you friends with?
5 if you count my children.
Taylor Swift is blank.
The one person my wife and I can agree on.
Make a high-pitched sound.
E.
I don't think that was an E, actually. That was.
All right, with that, I would like to thank our guest, Ryan Wilson, and my lovely co-host, James Carmen. I'm Aaron Chesney, and this has been the / where we lean into the future of IT.